Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Next Up Narcissism. Today, we're talking about no contact. Specifically, we're talking about going no contact with a narcissistic parent. What it looks like, what it means, how it happens, and most importantly, what happens after you set a no contact with a narcissistic parent. This episode, I hope, is helpful for those of you who are either currently in a situation where you've chosen to go no contact with a narcissistic parent, or those of you who are considering going no contact with a narcissistic parent. But also, this episode is for those of you who can't wrap your brain around why an adult child would choose to go no contact with their parent, which I get. So hopefully this episode will help answer all of those questions. I think you're going to find it extremely informational, and I think it's going to help and benefit many of you. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Next Up Narcissism. Today, we are talking about the concept of going no contact with a narcissistic parent. I get questions from many of you about going no contact and if they should do it, if they shouldn't do it. So we're going to go through not only what it is, but what it actually looks like when you implement it into a relationship with a narcissistic parent. So what is going no contact? We hear this all the time. So going no contact is exactly what it sounds like. It is cutting off all ties with the narcissistic parent, meaning there is no conversation on the phone, there is no text messaging, there is no social media interaction. They are blocked on all avenues of communication. In addition to that, you may block their friends, you may block their coworkers, you may block friends that you have in common. You may block additional family members. So it really is a very significant step. And that's what I want to focus on. I find that when people go no contact, people on the outside of the relationship don't understand. Now, it is not your job to explain it to anybody. But I want to talk a little bit about what is involved in actually making the decision to go no contact with a parent as an adult child. So a decision to go no contact is not a decision that is made overnight. It is not made in direct response to an argument that you had. It's not even in direct response to a ton of arguments you've had. The decision to go no contact with a parent is a last resort. No child ever asks to be in a situation where they need to make a decision to have a parent in their life or not. Because here's the thing. Even if you had a tumultuous relationship with your parents or parent, even if you had an extremely abusive upbringing or a neglectful upbringing or a psychologically or emotionally abusive upbringing, it is still an extremely difficult decision to cut a parent out of your life. So I want people listening to understand that when somebody does this, this is not a decision they took lightly. This is a decision, I guarantee you, that they have agonized over for a very long time. They have played this out repeatedly in their head. They have thought about how else they could possibly go about doing this without having to go no contact. Again, it is not a decision that is made overnight. It is not a decision that equates to being stubborn. It's not being stubborn. It is a last resort of self-protection. It is a last resort of self-protection against years of manipulation or years of abuse. Again, it's not something that a child just gets angry at their parent and decides they're not going to speak to them anymore. Because here's the thing. Yes, it's a very kind of proactive move. However, we would be naive to think that going no contact with a parent doesn't involve a grieving process, feelings of guilt. Because I can tell you, any patient that I have worked with that has gone no contact with a parent has a significant amount of guilt when they make that choice. The number one guilty scenario that they come up with is, what do I do when my parent gets sick? What do I do when my parent dies? And what I tell people is, you don't need to make that decision right now because you don't know how you're going to feel when that happens. Sometimes people surprise themselves with how they feel when somebody they've had no contact with passes away. Sometimes they're really indifferent to it. Sometimes they feel horrible remorse and regret. Sometimes they're appropriately sad, but they still don't feel that they should have been in contact with that person. No contact with a narcissistic parent, again, is done as a last resort for that child to maintain a sense of calm and peace in their world. Because the involvement of the narcissistic parent through the years has brought a tremendous amount of anxiety, depression, chaos, drama, and abuse. And it doesn't come until the adult child realizes that the parent's not going to change. That's the key thing. You know, as children, you always have this hope, right? You always have this wish that one day your mom or your dad or your sister or a significant other is going to change. And when you're dealing, in this case, specifically with somebody who has narcissistic personality disorder, you'll be waiting your entire life for them to change. Because even if they make the smallest of changes, the likelihood that they're going to maintain that change over time without intensive therapy is slim. So I find that a lot of my patients hang in the relationship on hope. They hang on hope. And I can't fault them for it. It's very confusing and goes against the grain that a parent would willingly and actively choose not to change their unhealthy behavior to save their relationship with their kid. And again, I'm talking specifically about narcissistic, abusive parents. I'm not talking about other types of toxic relationships. We know that with narcissistic parents, that the likelihood of them changing is slim. We know that the behavior will continue. And as the child gains more autonomy in their life, as the child goes to college, gets married, has children, has a career, that the narcissistic parent is going to view all of those steps towards autonomy as a threat, competition, abandonment, and they're not going to be supportive behind closed doors. Maybe outwardly they will, but not behind closed doors. So in order for you to maintain a relationship with a narcissistic parent, you need to remain stunted in your life, which is not fair to you. And so I find that when people hit that point of no longer wanting to live like this, or no longer wanting to carry the weight of the chaos that comes with these relationships, when they realize there is very little hope that the person's going to change, that's when they're able to go no contact. And again, going no contact does not mean you're excited about this. It is extremely upsetting. It's traumatic. And there's a significant grieving process that goes with this. You're disconnecting from a parent. Again, and we'll talk about this later in the podcast, but it's not very understood by the general public, right? Because society tells us that, we should love our parents unconditionally, right? And that we should do whatever we need to do to maintain a relationship with our parents because it's your mom or it's your dad. But here's the thing. It is not the child's job to repair a relationship with a narcissistic parent. It's not their job. And if they attempt to do that, they're going to just continue the cycle of abuse. They're going to just stay in that pattern for years and years, and it's going to be exhausting. The only way to break it is to go no contact. But again, understand that this is typically a last resort, and it is not an easy decision to make. There is a lot of relief that comes with going no contact from a narcissistic parent. But there is also a tremendous amount, like I said, of guilt and shame and loss and grief. So for people listening, let's say, that don't really understand going no contact with a parent, it's not as simple as just wiping your hands clean of them. Because for those of you that have gone no contact with a parent, you know that that doesn't mean that their communication attempts with you are going to stop. They often don't. They continue. The goal of no contact can't be to change the parent's behavior. It can't be to get them to stop contacting you, because narcissists never respect anybody's boundaries. So why on earth would they respect your boundary of going no contact? They won't. Going no contact is a boundary that you set for you and you only. It is for your self-preservation. It is for your sanity. It has nothing to do and has no impact directly, let's say, on the narcissistic parent. So if they continue to contact you through whatever means are still open, which is why it's important to really block them in every platform or every way that they could contact you, because they will continue to contact you. They're not going to respect that boundary, but that does not mean your no contact isn't working. But it shows the importance of having to restrict communication on all means of communication: email, phone, text, LinkedIn, Facebook, all of them. Now, here's the thing, and this is what I find frustrates people the most, and I posted about this recently on Instagram, of things that you'll commonly hear from outsiders when you go no contact with a parent. Because people on the outside have a very difficult time understanding this, they can't grasp why a child would voluntarily make the choice to go no contact. And here's what I say. And this is what I tell people to say to people who don't get it, because I really, truly don't believe it's the adult's responsibility to explain this to anybody. But if you feel compelled to say something, I like to tell people to say something along the lines of, consider yourself extremely lucky that you can't grasp this situation. Consider yourself extremely lucky that you have never been in this situation, nor have your children been in this situation. Consider yourself lucky. In my professional opinion, I find that when children find themselves in this position, it's an absolute failure of the parent, not of the child. The child did not fail the relationship, the parent did. And I think that's important for people to hear when they're considering going no contact. A lot of times people feel like they're not trying hard enough, or they failed at making this work. And the truth is it's the parent's job. In these types of dynamics with a narcissistic parent, it is not the child's job. It's just not. Not only is it not your job, but there's literally nothing you can do that you haven't done already. If you're in a situation where you're deciding to go no contact, it's because you have exhausted all other options. You have tried everything. You have waited endlessly. You have hoped. You have prayed. You have done everything humanly possible, and nothing has worked. Going no contact, like I said a million times before, is your last effort to be able to walk away with some sense of peace for you, for your own family. So here's what happens. You go no contact with a narcissistic parent. That narcissistic parent is never going to take accountability for their actions. You may hear an apology like, well, excuse me for not being a perfect parent. Or, well, I'm sorry, I just loved you too much. Or I'm sorry, I just care too much. Right? Or you're so different now. I don't know who you've become. This is not the child that I raised. Right? All those efforts kind of push you back to your original positioning of having no boundaries. Because the narcissistic parent benefits from that. They get supply from that. They're in control when you're like that. They don't like you like this. They don't have access to you. They don't have access to your thoughts. They can't manipulate your emotions. So when a narcissistic parent refuses to take accountability for their actions, they're not going to admit they did anything wrong. In fact, they're going to deflect blame onto the adult child. And for a long time, the adult child may have believed this narrative that they were somehow a bad child, that they were selfish, that they were horrible for, not interacting with their parent or not including their parent in things. They were made to feel that way for a really long time. But when they realize that that narrative is a false narrative that was told to them in an effort for the narcissistic parent to control them and control their emotions and control their thinking and control their behaviors, they realize that they do have two legs to stand on and they can take a stance, and nothing bad happens when you do. I'll repeat that. When you go no contact, nothing bad happens, except that you set a significant boundary. There is a loss, absolutely, but you have done nothing wrong. And the tendency to blame yourself comes from that narrative that you have been sold for a very long time, that you're selfish or you're different or that somehow this is your fault or that you have difficulty accepting all of this love from your parents or parent in the situation. So the apologies tend to be passive aggressive. They tend to be empty. They tend to be argumentative even. The apologies are not genuine. Now, here's where it gets tricky. Because the narcissist is very concerned with their image, they're also going to be very concerned with how the relationship they have with their child is viewed, how they're viewed as a parent in the community, around other people, around other family members. They're not ever going to give the people around them the full story. They're just not. They know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. They're actively choosing to do otherwise. And I think that's the part that's really hard for children of narcissistic parents to really kind of stomach. I'll get that comment a lot. So you mean my mother knows what she's doing? My father knows what they're doing, but they're doing it anyway? Yeah, they do. They function as effective parents only when it directly benefits them or only when it makes them look good. So if you go no contact and now the parent needs to explain why their child or their child's family is not with them on Thanksgiving or why they're not at the beach with them over Memorial Day weekend, where's your family? A narcissistic parent is not going to give an accurate story. They're going to sell their narrative. They're going to sell a narrative that sounds super convincing. They're going to come off extremely distraught. They're going to come off confused as to they don't understand why you would cut them off. They've been trying so hard to make this relationship work, and you have blocked them at every single attempt that they've made. You're going to even have, when we call them flying monkeys, you're going to have family members contact you on their behalf to no fault of their own, because these family members don't have the full story. They don't know the history of abuse. They don't know the history of manipulation. They don't know the history of lack of accountability. All they know is that you're not speaking to your parents anymore. And the parent portrays themselves as loving, kind, generous, philanthropic, supportive to everybody else. So the outside world is viewing this parent as loving and doting and devastated that their child won't speak to them anymore. So you have flying monkeys that are unknowingly carrying the narrative of the narcissistic parent. You have the narcissistic parent conveying to everybody around them that they have tried everything and you're just not willing to make the relationship work. And this can be extremely frustrating for the adult child because they're going to feel compelled to argue that point. They're going to feel compelled to give their side of the story. And despite what you may think, and despite what you may want to do, what I tell my patients is this. When you attempt to fix the narrative for other people, when you attempt to present the truth to other people, you're essentially doing exactly what the narcissist wants, unfortunately. The narcissist wants to get a reaction from you. They want you to respond. They want to know that you picked up the phone and called Aunt Sally and told Aunt Sally all of the reasons why what your parent said was wrong. Because Aunt Sally's going to call your parent and say, so-and-so called me and she told me this, and this. That's what they want. It is not your responsibility. It is not worth your time to defend what you know as fact. I'll repeat that. It is not your job or your responsibility to defend the narrative that the narcissist has told other people, even if it makes you look bad. You will never be able to sell the facts unless somebody else in the family or a close friend has had a similar experience and now can relate to you. But unless that happens, you really may be going at this alone. And again, that makes it extremely difficult because it's a very big decision. Some of the other comments that I hear from patients are things like, my parent left me a message saying I'm missing out on so much with them. And they get really upset with that, when the reality is the parent hasn't made an effort to fix anything. The parent hasn't made an effort to change anything. And you know that you have tried everything you possibly can. And this is what I say also. You need to do what's best for you. You need to do what's going to make you feel at peace when you put your head on that pillow at night. And it may change day to day, right? It's not like you're going to go no contact and you're going to put your head on your pillow and you're going to be, feeling great. You may know that it was the right decision, but it's going to come with a ton of anxiety. It's going to come with a ton of grief, but it's also going to come with a ton of relief. And you need to give yourself the opportunity to live post no contact, to be able to see that while you may feel guilt, your life is way less chaotic. You need to give yourself time to live post no contact, to show yourself that your life can be significantly calmer. Even though you have feelings of grief, even though you have feelings of sadness, your life is less chaotic. And that's the important piece. And it's a shame that it had to get to that point. But again, this is going to be different for everybody. But once you feel that you've done everything you possibly can, then you may go no contact as a last resort. So let's talk about the consistency and the importance of consistency when you go no contact with a parent. So like I said, going no contact with a parent has absolutely no influence on the narcissistic parent's behavior. That's not the purpose of going no contact. We don't know what they're going to do in response. Their behavior may escalate. They may contact you more. They may never contact you for another 3 months, and then it's your birthday, and then they contact you to start something on your birthday to cause chaos, whatever the case may be. And you can expect that when you go no contact with a narcissist, regardless if it's a parent, a significant other, doesn't matter. Around holidays, birthdays, anniversaries, graduations, promotions, funerals, chances are they're going to start something. Whether it's a phone call, whether it doesn't matter, but they're going to start something. But here's the thing with going no contact. I tell people, do not go no contact until you can guarantee with 100% certainty that you can maintain it. And here's why. I'm going to get a little nerdy with you with Behavior Therapy 101 here. But if you are inconsistent with setting a boundary, what ends up happening is you end up creating more of the behavior that you're trying to get rid of. Okay? So if you set inconsistent boundaries when you go no contact, let's say you don't speak for a week, but then you answer their call, or you speak for a month, or you don't speak for a month, then you unblock them on Facebook and you let them back in again. This inconsistent contact, no contact, actually creates more of the chaotic behavior that you're trying to reduce. So the example that I always give is, if you were going to come work for me and I told you, okay, this is your job description, this is the amount you're getting paid, and this is when you're getting paid each month, and it'll never change, you're going to have very little anxiety about what to do and when you're going to get paid, because you have all the information and it's consistent. You'll have very little anxiety about it. You know what to expect. You know when you're getting paid. You know all the facts. But if I said to you, you're going to come work for me, not only am I not going to tell you what your job description is, I'm not going to tell you how much I'm paying you. I'm not going to tell you what you need to do to increase your pay, and I'm not going to tell you when I'm paying you. And just when you think you figured it out, I'm going to change it all over again. Well, now you're going to come to work with an insane amount of anxiety because you have no idea what to expect. You don't know what you need to do to get a certain result. So you're going to be very confused and very anxious. This is the same thing for setting boundaries when you go no contact. You must be able to commit to it 100%. So what I tell people is, if they're not ready to do that, and they're not sure if they're ready to do that, which is so common, start small. Start only answering the phone at a certain time. Start only responding to text messages when they are not arguing with you or not being manipulative. Don't respond when they text you all the other crap. Or block them on social media, but still allow text messages. So you need to, each relationship is different, and each dynamic with a narcissist is different. So you need to figure out what works for you. But I think it's a very good step to start with this and ease in slowly. And you may find that blocking them on social media and only responding to fact-based texts from them work for you. That may keep you at peace, and that may keep them at bay enough for there to be no chaos. So test it, test the waters, see what works for you. You don't need to go from 0 to 60, especially if you don't think that you're going to be able to keep it. Now, if you find that as you set these smaller boundaries, that the behavior is still just as bad and you're just as stressed and it's just as chaotic, then you can move into no contact. And again, this is for parents, narcissistic parents. To do this with a significant other, with a spouse where you have kids involved, it looks a little bit different, which is another episode. But for this, you do this on your time. And each relationship, like I said, is different. Now, if you go no contact, and let's say 6 months go by, and they contact you on your birthday to wish you a happy birthday, and they leave you a very considerate, sweet message that says something like, or let's say you've blocked them and everything, so they send you a letter in the mail. And it's a very kind letter, and it says, I just want to let you know I'm thinking of you. Happy birthday. I miss you. I miss our relationship. Please contact me. And you get this, and it's been a long time, and you're devastated as it is that you don't speak to them. You hated that you were in this situation to have to even make a decision like this. And you read this letter, it's your birthday, and you get really upset. And you think to yourself, well, maybe the 6 months of not speaking scared them. Maybe they realize now what it's like to not have contact with me. And maybe that's enough for them to shift their behaviors. Valid thought if your parent was not a narcissist, unfortunately. When your parent is a narcissist, if you get back in touch with them and you break the no contact, they may, for a couple months, or a couple days, be extremely nurturing, be extremely appropriate, be extremely boundaried, because they know that's what you've been asking for. But the likelihood of that behavior lasting is very slim, unfortunately. So I know there may be people listening saying everybody can change. Everyone can change. And that's true. However, when you are dealing with a narcissistic parent who has been like this your entire childhood into adulthood, despite all your efforts to make the relationship work, despite all your efforts to hear them out, explain yourself to them, let them know they're hurting you, it still won't work. And so the thought that maybe this time will be different is again holding on to that hope, which keeps adult children stuck in the abusive cycle with a narcissistic parent. And so when you get a letter like that, or when somehow somebody tells you, oh, I saw your dad or I saw your mom, and they miss you so much, you have to remember a couple things. One, they're not going to present to outsiders as a narcissistic parent would. They're going to present as devastated to their friends, as so unbelievably confused as to why you won't speak to them, that they are trying so desperately to get in touch with you, but you won't talk to them. You don't want to make it work. You haven't contacted them in God knows how long. What they're leaving out is why this happened in the first place. I mean, think about it. For a child to stop speaking to their parent after years of trying and trying and trying, something bad had to have happened, right? And it doesn't have to be one event. It's a culmination oftentimes of small, manipulative, isolated, psychological type abuse over years. It's rarely one event. So again, they're going to convey this image of confusion and just being distraught, because that's their only option. They're never going to say, well, I violate my child's boundaries all the time, and I don't like when they become independent because I feel it's a threat to my control. I don't have any say in their life and I can't handle that anymore. So I'm not, so I manipulate them and manipulate their family. They're never going to say that. So instead, they will shift blame to you. So when you have people coming at you, I saw your parents, or I saw your mom, I saw your dad, and they miss you so much, you really should contact them. And you're sitting there going, I should contact them? Do you know what contacting them has been like my whole life, right? I'll have patients tell me that, their parents will tell, let's say, a friend, and the friend sees the adult child and says, your mom or your dad is devastated, and all they want to do is just speak with you. And can't you guys resolve this? Why can't you put this behind you? If your parents willing to put it behind you, why can't you? But really what that means in the language of narcissistic abuse is, why can't you just accept what I've done to you and just continue to be in this relationship? Brush it away, push it under the rug, or just get over it? Or can we just let bygones be bygones? Can we just let this go and start new? I hear that one a lot from patients. Can't we just start new? Let's start with a blank slate. Really what that means is the narcissist saying, I'm not going to take accountability for a damn thing I've done up till now, so I'm going to act like a parent, quote, should for a little while, and then I'm going to go back to how I was. But by then you'll already be sucked in again. So your job is not to explain to flying monkeys why it is that you don't want to have contact. You don't owe anybody an explanation. Period. You may feel compelled to defend yourself. I get that. But you need to consider the source and the function. And guys always know I talk about function. The function of the narcissistic parent presenting as devastated and confused is to get a reaction from you through whatever means necessary. It's not your job to respond. And I will add this as well. If you have gotten to the point where you have set no contact with a parent who is a narcissist, you have done nothing wrong. I'm sure you have thought about this for a very long time, and the fact that you did it does not make you a bad person. It doesn't make you a bad child. It makes you incredibly brave to put your mental wellness first in such a horrific situation and such a horrific decision that you need to make. So for those of you listening who have done that, I commend you. It's a really difficult decision. I have patients who have such, you name it, they have anxiety, anger, stress about making this decision. It's a big decision. It's not as simple as, but it's your mom, but it's your dad. You only have one. Well, correct, you do. But you're their child. Period. And unfortunately, just because it's your mom or just because it's your dad and just because you only have one doesn't mean you have to stand for the abuse. It doesn't mean that you should tolerate narcissistic abuse for the rest of your life. It's their job as your only mom or your only dad to treat you with unconditional love, which unfortunately they're not capable of doing. So I hope that this gives those of you listening who are in this situation or who are thinking about making this decision or, can't for the life of you understand this situation, which I get. I hope that this gave you some clarity, and I hope that this gave you some comfort. It's a really difficult situation. Again, like I said, that no kid wants to be in, no adult child wants to be in. I hope this gives you, like I said, some comfort and some peace and some clarity. But most importantly, know that if you are in this situation and you have gone no contact, this in no way, shape, or form means that you are a bad person, a bad child, or stubborn. It means that you are putting yourself first for the first time in a very long time. And for that, I congratulate you. I will speak to everybody soon, and have a great day. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Next Up Narcissism. I hope you found it useful, but most importantly, I hope you found it validating. Want to work one-on-one with me? Visit my website at drjamiezuckerman.com to book a personalized coaching session, and be sure to check out my on-demand workshops on topics like co-parenting with a narcissist, life after leaving, anxiety management strategies, and more. Again, that's drjamiezuckerman.com. You'll also find links to my interactive workbooks, merchandise, resources, and newsletter sign-up. Next Up Narcissism is as much your podcast as it is mine. I want to hear your feedback and what you want to hear. So make sure to leave a podcast review wherever you listen, or send an email to nextup@drjamiezuckerman.com. Again, that's nextup@drjamiezuckerman.com. Be sure to subscribe so that you never miss an episode. And as always, thank you so much for listening. Make sure to tune in next week to see what's up next on Next Up Narcissism.